My beloved friend, the greatest battles you will ever fight are not with the world outside of you, but with the voice within you. How often do we lift up others, telling them they are strong, capable, and loved, while whispering only doubt, defeat, and criticism to ourselves? You see, the secret to living a victorious life begins with the posture of your own heart toward yourself. God never created you to live in despair, shame, or endless self-condemnation. He created you with purpose, clothed you in dignity, and planted within you the seed of victory. But that seed cannot grow in the soil of negativity. It flourishes only when bathed in the sunshine of a positive attitude. I want to share with you today 7 powerful truths, 7 key steps to help you stay positive toward yourself and unlock the extraordinary life God has intended for you. When you look at yourself in the mirror, what do you see? Too often, my friend, the reflection you stare at is clouded by the judgments of others, by the harsh criticisms you have absorbed over the years, and by the weight of your own self-doubt. But I want to remind you of a truth so profound, so foundational, that if you truly believed it, your entire life would change. You are God's creation. Before you ever took your first breath, before you ever stumbled, before you ever succeeded, before you ever failed, God had already written your name upon his heart. You are not an accident. You are not a mistake. You are the intentional work of a loving Creator. Think of it for a moment. The same God who painted the heavens with stars, who carved the mountains, who set the oceans in their place, who designed the flight of the eagle and the fragrance of the rose, this same God chose to fashion you. He did not create you with scraps or leftovers. He did not rush through your design. No, he took his time. He wove into you uniqueness, a fingerprint unlike any other, a voice that cannot be duplicated, a soul that carries eternal value. And when he looked upon his creation, when he looked upon you, he declared, "It is very good." But how easily we forget this truth. We compare ourselves to others. We measure our worth by their successes and our failures. We listen to the cruel words of people who never understood our value, and then we carry those words inside like heavy chains. Perhaps you were told you were not good enough, not smart enough, not attractive enough, not strong enough. Perhaps you've carried those labels for so long that you've begun to believe them. But those labels are lies. They do not come from the one who made you. God never called you inadequate. God never called you worthless. He called you beloved. He called you chosen. And yet, I know how the mind works. Sometimes you hear a sermon or a motivational word and you feel uplifted for a while. But then late at night, when the room is quiet and your thoughts grow loud, you return to criticizing yourself. You replay the mistakes of your past. You magnify your weaknesses. You speak words to yourself that you would never dare to speak to a friend. And slowly, your own spirit begins to wither under the weight of that negativity. Oh, my dear, don't you see? When you attack yourself, you are attacking the very handiwork of God. To despise yourself is to despise the one who created you. I once met a young woman who came to me after a service. With tears in her eyes, she whispered, "Miss Kuhlman, I don't think God could ever love me. I failed too many times. I don't even love myself. How could he?" My heart broke as I listened, because here stood a child of God, beautifully made, wonderfully designed, but blinded by shame. I took her hands in mine, and I said, "Do you think your failures surprise God? Do you think the one who knew you before you were born is shocked by your struggles? No, dear one. He loved you before your first success, and he loved you before your first mistake. His love for you has never wavered, and if he, the creator of heaven and earth, has chosen to love you, who are you to refuse to love yourself?" That young woman wept as though years of chains were being broken in that moment, and I believe they were. She realized something life-changing. Her worth was never based on her perfection, but on God's creation. And the same is true for you. Every time you belittle yourself, you are living beneath your true identity. You are agreeing with lies instead of with truth. But when you begin to see yourself through the lens of your Creator, when you remind yourself daily, I am his handiwork. I am his masterpiece. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Something shifts inside you. Negativity loses its grip, and in their place rises a holy confidence, not arrogance, not pride, but a deep assurance that you belong to God and that he delights in you. So I urge you today, stop cursing what God has blessed. Stop speaking against what he has created. You are not defined by your scars, but by his hands. You are not measured by your failures, but by his love. You are not identified by your shortcomings, but by his design. Hold your head high, not because of who you are in the world's eyes, but because of who you are in God's eyes. Let that truth take root in your soul. When you recognize you are God's creation, negativity cannot stay. Darkness cannot remain. Hope begins to rise, and joy begins to return. You are his. And that, my dear friend, is enough. There is a voice inside of you that speaks louder than any other. It is not always heard with the ears, but it is always heard with the heart. It is the voice that whispers in your mind when you wake up in the morning, the voice that echoes in the silence when you are alone, the voice that shapes how you see yourself and how you walk through this life. My friend, that voice, your inner voice, will either be your greatest ally or your fiercest enemy. And what you feed that voice, what you allow it to repeat day after day, will eventually become the story of your life. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to speak encouragement to someone else, but how difficult it is to extend that same encouragement to yourself? You will tell a friend, "You can make it. You're strong. You'll overcome this storm." But when you face your own challenges, the words change. Suddenly you say to yourself, "I'll never succeed. I'm not good enough. I always mess things up." And slowly those words become like chains, binding your spirit, dragging you down into defeat before the battle has even begun. What you continually tell yourself becomes the script that you live out. If your inner voice repeats failure, you will walk as though you have already lost. If your inner voice repeats fear, you will shrink back from opportunities meant to lift you higher. But if your inner voice repeats faith, if it repeats hope, if it reminds you of the truth that God has spoken over you, then you will walk with strength, with courage, with a light that cannot be hidden. I remember a man who came to me once, weary and heavy with disappointment. He had faced rejection in business, in relationships, in his personal goals, and he said to me, "Kathryn, I've stopped trying because every time I tell myself to try again, another voice inside me says, 'Why bother? You'll just fail again.'" Can you see how destructive that is? Before he ever took another step, he had already defeated himself, not because the world said no, but because his own heart said no. That is the power of the inner voice. Do not underestimate it. The voice you allow inside will shape the way you see every situation. Two people can face the same obstacle. One says, "This is the end, I'll never get through it." The other says, "This is hard, but with God's help, I will overcome." And do you know what happens? They live out what they believe. One crumbles under the weight of negativity. The other rises on the wings of faith. It is not always the circumstance that determines the outcome. It is the voice within. This is why you must guard that voice. Do not let it become a place where the enemy of your soul plants lies. Do not let it be filled with the echoes of every insult, every criticism, every harsh word spoken against you in the past. Replace them with the promises that God Himself has spoken over you. If He says you are loved, then whisper to yourself, "I am loved." If He says you are chosen, then say, "I am chosen." If He says you are more than a conqueror, then speak it until your soul begins to believe it. Oh, how powerful it is when a person learns to speak life over themselves. You begin to walk differently. You begin to expect differently. Instead of waking up with dread, you rise with hope. Instead of going to bed defeated, you close your eyes with peace. And it is not because every problem is solved, but because the atmosphere of your inner world has changed. Perhaps you have been harsh with yourself for too long. Perhaps the words you've spoken inwardly are more cruel than anything you would dare say aloud. But today can be the day you change that script. It begins by catching yourself in those moments. When you hear yourself saying, "I can't," pause and replace it with, "God's help, I can." When you hear yourself saying, "I'm not enough," replace it with, "I am enough, because God is with me." It may feel unnatural at first, but little by little, those words will begin to reshape your spirit. The human soul was never meant to thrive on words of defeat. It was meant to grow in the light of encouragement and hope. Just as plants lean toward the sunlight, so your heart leans toward words of life. Feed it with those words, and watch how your confidence grows. Watch how your resilience deepens. Watch how your perspective shifts. My dear friend, the inner voice you nurture today will be the life you live tomorrow. Guard it, protect it, and teach it to echo truth, not lies, faith, not fear, hope, not despair. And as you do, you will discover a new strength rising within you, a strength that cannot be shaken, because it is rooted in the words of life you've chosen to believe. So many of us have mastered the art of being kind to others, but we remain strangers to kindness when it comes to ourselves. We know how to lift up a friend, how to forgive a neighbor, how to comfort a child in distress. And yet, when we look inward, we become our harshest critic, our most unforgiving judge, our own worst enemy. It is easier for some to extend compassion to the entire world than to extend 1 ounce of mercy toward themselves. But hear me, beloved, this imbalance cannot remain if you desire a life of true peace and positivity. Think of the times you've stumbled. What did you say to yourself in those moments? Did you speak as a loving friend would, or did you lash out at your own soul with words that cut deeper than any knife? You tell yourself, "I should have known better. I always fail. I'll never change. I'm useless." Those words repeated again and again become a poison that seeps into your spirit until even the thought of trying again feels impossible. But let me remind you of something beautiful. God Himself does not deal with you so harshly. When you fall, He does not abandon you. When you fail, He does not scorn you. The scripture says He is slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. If the Creator of the universe can extend mercy toward you, why should you refuse to show mercy to yourself? I once spoke with a man who carried the weight of his past like a heavy stone tied around his neck. He could not forgive himself for the mistakes he had made in his youth. He said to me, "I know God forgives me, but I cannot forgive myself." And I answered him softly, "Then you have set yourself above God. If the Almighty has chosen to pardon you, who are you to continue holding yourself captive? Mercy has already been given. You need only to accept it." That man wept like a child, and in his tears years of shame began to break away. Compassion toward yourself does not mean excusing wrong or ignoring responsibility. No, it means acknowledging that you are human, that you are growing, that failure is not the end, but a teacher along the way. It means saying, "Yes, I fell, but I will rise again. Yes, I erred, but I am learning. Yes, I am imperfect, but I am still worthy of love." This is the language of compassion, the language that heals instead of wounds. Can you imagine speaking to your best friend the way you often speak to yourself? Suppose your friend came to you, trembling with regret, ashamed of their failure. Would you say to them, "You're hopeless, you'll never change, you're nothing but a disappointment"? Of course not. You would comfort them, encourage them, remind them of their value. Yet somehow when it comes to your own soul, you show no such mercy. Why should it be so? The truth is, until you learn to treat yourself with compassion, you will never fully live in the power of positivity. A heart constantly under the weight of self-condemnation cannot soar. You will live beneath the potential God placed in you because you've silenced your own spirit with cruelty. But when you begin to show yourself the compassion you deserve, when you begin to treat yourself as a beloved child of God, a transformation happens. You start to walk lighter. The chains of shame begin to loosen. You find courage to try again, to step into opportunities, to believe in possibilities. Compassion gives you permission to grow, to change, to keep moving forward without being shackled by yesterday. Perhaps you are listening now and you feel unworthy. Perhaps your heart whispers, "I've made too many mistakes. I don't deserve compassion." But that, my dear, is the very reason compassion exists. Mercy is not for the perfect, it is for the broken. Grace is not for the flawless, it is for the fallen. And if God's mercy is new every morning, then you too must wake up and greet yourself with mercy each day. The way you speak to yourself in your private thoughts matters. Replace the cruel words with gentle ones. Replace the accusations with affirmations of truth. Instead of saying, "I am hopeless," say, "I am learning." Instead of saying, "I am a failure," say, "I am growing." Instead of saying, "I can never change," say, "With God's help, I am changing every day." This is not self-deception. It is choosing to align your thoughts with the reality of grace. So let today be the day you turn the tide. Decide that you will no longer treat yourself as an enemy, but as a friend. Decide that your inner voice will become one of compassion, encouragement, and hope. For when you extend compassion toward yourself, You are not excusing your flaws. You are agreeing with God's love. And in that agreement lies the power to heal, to grow, and to truly live. Gratitude is one of the most powerful forces that can transform your heart, your mind, and your entire outlook on life. And yet, how often do we neglect it? How often do we allow the spirit of grumbling to take root, while overlooking the countless blessings right before our eyes? My friend, negativity thrives where gratitude is absent. But when gratitude takes its rightful place in your soul, joy begins to bloom, peace begins to flourish, and even in the darkest of valleys, light begins to shine. Have you ever noticed that the people who seem most content are not always the ones who have the most? They are often the ones who have learned to give thanks for the little they do have. Meanwhile, there are those who have abundance, yet they walk through life complaining, never satisfied, always hungry for more. You see, it is not what you have that determines your peace. It is how you perceive what you have. A grateful heart can turn the smallest meal into a feast, the humblest home into a palace, the simplest moment into a treasure. Grumbling, on the other hand, magnifies what is lacking. It blinds your eyes to beauty and trains your focus only on what you think you are missing. A person who constantly complains lives in poverty of spirit, no matter how much they own. But gratitude opens the eyes to see God's goodness in every corner of life. Gratitude says, I may not have everything I want, but I thank God for what I do have. I may not be where I long to be, but I thank God I am not where I used to be. I remember once meeting a woman who had endured much suffering. She had lost her husband. Her health was frail, and her financial means were scarce. And yet, as she spoke, there was a glow about her, a light in her eyes that no circumstance could dim. She said, every morning I wake up, I thank God for the breath in my lungs. I thank Him for the sunrise, for the sound of the birds, for the very fact that He has given me another day. Do you see the power of such a spirit? Her life was not easy, but her heart was overflowing with gratitude, and that gratitude gave her strength and joy that money could never buy. Contrast that with the person who complains about everything, the weather, their job, their family, their opportunities. They wake up and their first thought is, what will go wrong today? And because they expect disappointment, they find it everywhere. The same sun that warms another feels like a burden to them. The same family that could be a source of love feels like a nuisance. The same job that provides bread on the table feels like chains around their neck. This is the tragic power of ingratitude. It twists blessings into burdens, gifts into grievances. But gratitude untwists the lies. It recenters your heart on truth. When you cultivate gratitude, you are training your mind to look for the fingerprints of God in every detail of your day. And those fingerprints are everywhere, if only you will choose to see them. In the smile of a stranger, in the laughter of a child, in the gentle breeze that brushes your face, in the quiet strength that carries you through the trial. Gratitude does not wait for life to be perfect before it rejoices. Gratitude rejoices now because it knows that every breath is a miracle, every moment is a gift, and every day is a blessing. Perhaps you say, but you don't know what I'm going through. You don't know the pain I carry, and you are right. I may not know, but I do know this. Even in the darkest night, there are stars. Even in the fiercest storm, there is shelter. Even in the hardest battle, there is a reason to thank God. Gratitude does not deny the pain. It simply refuses to let the pain have the final word. It lifts your eyes from what you've lost to what you still have, from what has gone wrong to what is still right. And let me tell you something beautiful. Gratitude is contagious. When you live with a grateful spirit, others around you begin to notice. Your family feels it. Your friends are uplifted by it. Even strangers sense it. A grateful person changes the atmosphere wherever they go, because their words are not filled with complaint, but with thanksgiving. Their presence does not bring heaviness but lightness, not despair but hope. If you want to stay positive toward yourself, begin here. Begin with gratitude. Start small if you must. Each morning, whisper a simple prayer. Thank you, God, for this new day. Each evening, reflect on 3 things you can be thankful for. At first, it may feel ordinary, but over time, gratitude will rewire your thoughts, soften your heart, and turn your attitude toward joy. Oh, my dear friend, never underestimate the power of gratitude. It is the antidote to negativity, the key to contentment, and the pathway to peace. When you choose gratitude, you are choosing life, you are choosing joy, you are choosing to see yourself and your world through the eyes of hope. And in that choice lies the power of a positive attitude. The people you surround yourself with will either lift you higher or pull you lower. The voices you allow into your life will either water the seeds of faith within you or choke them with weeds of doubt. So many precious souls live in unnecessary discouragement, not because they are weak or incapable, but because they are constantly listening to the wrong voices. My dear, you cannot walk in the fullness of positivity if you are daily breathing in the poison of negativity from those around you. Think for a moment of the company you keep. Are you surrounded by encouragers or complainers? Do the conversations you engage in leave you hopeful or drained? Words are powerful. They carry spirit, they carry weight, they carry influence. And when you continually expose your spirit to words of criticism, fear, and hopelessness, it becomes very difficult to keep your own thoughts pure and positive. The environment you dwell in shapes the atmosphere of your soul. I remember meeting a young man who was full of dreams, full of potential. He had ideas burning in his heart and a passion to make a difference. But everywhere he turned, he met voices of discouragement. His family told him, "Be realistic. You'll never succeed." His friends mocked him, saying, "You're foolish to even try." Slowly, those voices drowned out his own. Slowly, he stopped believing in himself, not because his dreams were impossible, but because he allowed himself to live in an environment that poisoned his hope. Contrast that with another man I knew who faced similar obstacles. His resources were few, his circumstances difficult, but he surrounded himself with people who spoke life. When he faltered, they reminded him of his strength. When he doubted, they encouraged him to keep going. They believed in him until he began to believe in himself again. And though the road was hard, he rose above every challenge because he did not walk alone. He walked with voices that breathed faith into his weary spirit. Do you see the difference? Both men faced mountains, but one was surrounded by those who pushed him down, while the other was surrounded by those who lifted him up. This is why it matters so greatly whom you allow into your circle. The voices you listen to today will determine the attitude you carry tomorrow. Now, I do not mean you should cut yourself off from everyone who struggles. We are called to show compassion, to extend love. But you must guard the inner circle of your life. The closest voices to you should be those who align with your values, those who encourage your faith, those who remind you of who you truly are. If you make the mistake of keeping constant company with negativity, sooner or later it will seep into your own spirit. But if you choose to surround yourself with light, your own heart will shine brighter. Even Scripture gives us wisdom here. Bad company corrupts good character. That is not merely about morality, it is also about attitude. A good and positive spirit can be worn down by constant exposure to cynicism. On the other hand, iron sharpens iron. When you walk with those who speak life, who believe in goodness, who carry hope, they sharpen you, they make you stronger, they stir within you the courage to keep going. And may I say, sometimes it is not only people you must be mindful of, it is what you consume. The books you read, the programs you watch, the voices you follow, all of these are shaping your atmosphere. If you fill your mind daily with messages of fear, gossip, and despair, do not be surprised when negativity becomes your natural language. But if you choose to fill your mind with words of encouragement, stories of faith, songs of hope, you will find yourself walking lighter, thinking clearer, and staying positive even in storms. I urge you to take inventory of your surroundings. Ask yourself honestly, who is speaking into my life? What am I feeding my mind and spirit each day? If it is not life-giving, if it does not uplift, if it does not strengthen, then it does not deserve the power to shape your attitude. You may not always be able to choose your circumstances, but you can choose your company. You can choose what you allow to influence you, and that choice will determine your inner strength. Beloved, surround yourself with encouragers. Find people who believe in you, even when you struggle to believe in yourself. Draw near to those who remind you of God's promises. When you forget them, let your closest circle be those who see the best in you, who bring out the best in you, and who call forth the best from you. For when you walk with such people, positivity becomes easier, faith becomes stronger, and your spirit finds the strength to soar. Do not underestimate the power of your environment. Just as a plant thrives in sunlight and withers in darkness, so does your soul. Place yourself in the light. Surround yourself with people and influences that help you grow. And watch as your life begins to reflect the very positivity you have been longing for. Life has a way of presenting us with setbacks. No one is exempt. You may plan carefully, work diligently, pray earnestly, and still face doors that close, opportunities that slip away, and seasons where nothing seems to go as you hoped. And in those moments, the temptation is to throw up your hands and declare, "It's over. I've failed. There's no point in going on." But listen to me, beloved. What looks like a setback to you may very well be a setup in the hands of God. What feels like the end could be the very beginning of something greater than you imagined. So much of life is determined not by what happens to us, but by how we respond to what happens to us. When you carry a negative spirit, every disappointment feels final. A closed door becomes a declaration that you are not worthy. A failed attempt convinces you never to try again. But when you carry a positive attitude, you see those same moments differently. A closed door is not rejection, it is redirection. A failed attempt is not a reason to quit. It is a lesson, a stepping stone, a preparation for something better. I once spoke with a man who had lost his job. After many years of service, he was devastated. He said to me, "Kathryn, I've given everything to this company, and now they've turned me away. I don't know what I'll do." He saw it as the end. But with time, he discovered a new path, one that opened doors for him to use his talents in ways he never would have imagined. Looking back, he told me, "Losing that job was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it pushed me into the place I was truly meant to be. What looked like a setback became a divine setup." That is the power of perspective. A negative attitude convinces you that trouble will destroy you. A positive attitude teaches you that trouble can refine you. Negativity stops you in your tracks. Positivity propels you forward, even when the road is hard. It does not deny the pain, but it dares to believe there is purpose in the pain. Even nature teaches us this truth. Consider the seed planted deep in the soil. At first glance, it appears to be buried, lost, forgotten in the dark. But in reality, that burial is not the end. It is the beginning of new life. The darkness is the very environment where roots grow strong, where the seed prepares to break forth into something greater. My friend, sometimes God allows you to be placed in seasons that feel like burial, but in reality, you are being planted, prepared, and positioned for growth. The great men and women of history, the ones who accomplished remarkable things, were not strangers to failure. They were not spared from setbacks. In fact, most of them faced rejection, criticism, and defeat many times before they succeeded. The difference was not that their path was easier, it was that their attitude was different. They refused to let failure define them. They refused to let setbacks become their stopping point. They chose to learn, to adapt, to keep moving forward, and that is what set them apart. You see, when you trust God, you begin to realize that He can take even the most painful setbacks and weave them into the story of your life for what others meant for harm. He can turn for your benefit. What seemed like a closed door, He can transform into an open window of opportunity. But He will not force you to see it that way. You must choose the attitude with which you view your circumstances. Perhaps you have faced a season where dreams collapsed, where relationships broke, where plans failed. Perhaps you are tempted to label that chapter of your life as wasted. But I urge you, do not call it wasted. Do not call it finished. Call it preparation. Call it planting. Call it a setup for something yet to come. Because with God, nothing is wasted. Even your tears are collected. Even your failures are redeemed. When you adopt this perspective, setbacks lose their power to crush you. You begin to rise after every fall. You begin to look at challenges with expectation, asking not, "Why did this happen to me?" but rather, "What can I learn from this? What is God preparing me for through this?" That shift in attitude changes everything. It fills you with resilience. It strengthens your faith. It allows you to walk through the darkest valleys with your head lifted high, because you know that the valley is not the end, it is the pathway to higher ground. So the next time you face a disappointment, remember this: it is not over. Your story does not end with failure. Your life is not defined by the chapters that went wrong, but by the author who is still writing. What you call a setback may one day be the very thing that propels you into your destiny. Hold fast to that truth. Stay positive. Keep believing. For in the hands of God, every setback has the potential to become your greatest setup. At the heart of every positive attitude lies one unshakable truth. The promises of God never fail. You can try to muster positivity on your own, and for a while you may succeed. You may recite affirmations. You may try to think good thoughts. You may even put on a smile while your heart feels heavy. But true positivity, the kind that endures through storms, that does not crumble when life grows dark, comes only from resting in the eternal, unchanging promises of God. How fragile is human optimism when it stands alone. A person may say, things will work out, but what happens when they do not? Another may whisper, tomorrow will be better, but what if tomorrow brings more sorrow? When our hope rests only on circumstances, positivity becomes like sand slipping through our fingers. Here one moment, gone the next. But when our hope rests on the solid foundation of God's word, then no matter what comes, we remain steady, unshaken, unbroken. Do you remember the words, I will never leave you nor forsake you? That is not simply a comforting phrase to read, it is the very heartbeat of God toward you. Imagine for a moment the power of that promise. In your loneliest nights, when no one else understands, He is there. In your deepest failures, when shame weighs heavily, He is there. In your brightest victories and darkest defeats, He is there. The God of the universe, the one who spoke galaxies into existence, has promised His presence to you personally. What greater assurance could you carry? What greater reason to remain positive in every circumstance? I once spoke with a woman who had endured many hardships. Her health was failing, her family situation was broken, and her finances were crumbling. And yet she carried a joy that radiated through her words. When I asked her how she remained so positive, despite such pain, she said simply, because I know God cannot lie. If He promised to be with me, then I am never truly alone. If He promised to give me peace, then peace will come. If He promised that all things work together for good, then even this will somehow be used for my good. You see, her positivity was not a fragile optimism. It was anchored in divine assurance. That kind of faith can weather any storm. So many people chase after temporary sources of positivity. They cling to the approval of others. They lean on fleeting success. They depend on circumstances aligning perfectly before they allow themselves to smile. But my dear, such foundations will always crack beneath the weight of life. People may change. Success may fade. Circumstances may shift overnight. But God's promises remain the same yesterday, today, and forever. That is why resting in Him is the only sure path to lasting positivity. When you anchor your heart in His promises, fear begins to lose its grip. Anxiety weakens. Doubt shrinks. Because you are no longer relying on your limited strength. You are relying on the unlimited faithfulness of God. And that gives you a calm assurance that even when you do not understand the how or the why, you can still declare, it is well with my soul. Perhaps right now you are walking through a valley where the promises feel far away. Perhaps you are tempted to think, God has forgotten me. His word is not true for me. But listen carefully. Your feelings do not change his faithfulness. The storm does not erase the sun. It only hides it for a time. And soon the clouds will part, and the light of his promises will shine again. Do not let temporary shadows make you doubt eternal truth. Fill your heart daily with his promises. Read them, speak them, hold them close as your shield when negativity tries to invade your thoughts. When the voice inside says, you cannot make it, answer with the promise, I can do all things through God who strengthens me. When the voice whispers, you are alone, declare, he will never leave me nor forsake me. When the voice says, there is no future for you, proclaim, God has plans to prosper me, to give me hope and a future. These promises are not empty words. They are living truths given to you by the one who cannot fail. And the more you rest in them, the more natural positivity becomes. It ceases to be something you strive for, and instead becomes the overflow of a heart anchored in certainty. You no longer have to force yourself to think positive. You live positive because your confidence is in the God who never changes. So, my beloved, let your soul rest. Stop striving to hold everything together on your own. Lean into his promises. Let them carry you when you are weary. Let them comfort you when you are broken. Let them strengthen you when you are weak. For in his promises lies a wellspring of hope, a fountain of peace, a reservoir of joy that never runs dry. And when you live from that place, positivity is no longer a mask you wear. It becomes the song of your soul. Beloved, staying positive toward yourself is not arrogance. It is obedience. It is agreeing with what God says about you rather than what fear or failure tries to whisper. When you walk in positivity, you shine his light to the world. Lift your head. Speak kindly to yourself. Believe in the greatness planted within you. And remember, a positive attitude is not just a choice. It is power. It is freedom. It is victory.